She thought I was nothing, until the payment arrived. If you are watching this video, tell me where are you from, or what time is it for you? It started on the morning of my wedding day. I was standing in front of a small mirror, in a borrowed room, fastening the same pair of pearl earrings my mother had worn 40 years ago. The dress I wore was simple, ivory lace, hand-stitched by a friend who owed me nothing but kindness. To anyone else, it probably looked cheap. To me, it looked like promise. But not to my future mother-in-law. When she entered the room, her perfume arrived first, the kind that costs more than a week's rent. She glanced at me from head to toe and tilted her head like she was assessing a stain. "So that's the dress?" she said. I turned, smiling nervously. "Yes, ma'am. What do you think?" Her lips curved in the kind of smile that doesn't warm a room. It's simple. "Thank you," I said softly. "Oh," she added. "I didn't mean it as a compliment." She was the kind of woman who believed luxury proved loyalty. Everything in her life had a label. Her bags, her shoes, even her friends. I, on the other hand, came from a small town where people wore kindness the way she wore diamonds. My family had given everything to make this wedding happen. My mother sold her sewing machine, my father pawned his watch, and I used my savings from 2 years of working at the library. Still, the ceremony was modest. We couldn't afford the grand hotel her son's family wanted. We chose a garden instead, green, alive, honest. That's why her eyes narrowed the first time she saw the setup. "Where are the chandeliers?" she asked my fiancé, Ethan. I smiled. We thought lanterns would be more charming. "Lanterns?" she repeated, her tone sharper than the wind. "How rustic." Ethan tried to calm her, but I could already feel the divide growing like a crack in the glass between us. "At the rehearsal dinner, she made sure everyone noticed the difference between us. Oh, sweetheart," she said loudly across the table. "Did you know designers offer custom gowns? It's such a shame some people settle for off the rack." People laughed politely. I smiled even though my chest burned. Ethan reached under the table and squeezed my hand. "Ignore her," he whispered. "You're perfect." But when you're being mocked by the woman who raised the man you love, ignoring isn't that simple. I spent that night alone, staring at the ceiling, whispering to myself, "Let her talk. You'll show her soon." The next day, as the guests arrived, her friends circled her like satellites. "Oh, Margaret," one of them said, "your son's bride is so humble." Margaret smiled tightly. "Yes, humble and budget-friendly. Heard it. Everyone did." When I walked down the aisle, I saw her whisper something behind her fan. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe my heart just imagined it. But I could swear she was smirking. Still, I kept walking. I didn't wear gold, but I wore grace. The ceremony went beautifully. When Ethan and I exchanged vows, I saw something change in her eyes. Just for a moment. Maybe she realized love doesn't always fit her definition of elegance. But her words, after the ceremony, erased that softness instantly. "Well," she said, clapping lightly. "That was cute." Ethan frowned. "Mom." She ignored him and turned to me. "I suppose now you'll be wanting our family to cover the reception." "Cost," I smiled. "No need. It's already paid." She blinked. "Paid? By whom?" "By me." She laughed, thinking it was a joke. "You? On what budget?" "The one you said didn't exist." Her laugh faltered. "You mean you paid for this entire wedding?" "Yes," I said calmly. "Every flower, every plate, every chair. And I paid for your dress alterations, too." Her friends turned to look at her, surprised. She turned pale. "My dress?" "Yes," I said softly. "The boutique sent the invoice by mistake. I didn't want you embarrassed, so I paid it." The silence was sharper than any insult she'd ever given me. For a long moment, she just stared. Then she whispered, "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't buy love, Margaret. I honor it, even when it doesn't honor me back." Her eyes shimmered, with anger, maybe shame, maybe both. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Ethan reached for my hand, proud and quiet. The band began to play. The guests turned their attention back to the dance floor, but for the rest of the evening she barely spoke. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was peace. Because sometimes dignity sounds a lot like silence. That night when Ethan and I drove away, from the reception he looked at me and said, "You didn't have to do that." "I did," I said. "Because people like your mother don't learn from lectures. They learn from moments." He nodded, then smiled. "You gave her one she'll never forget." I looked out the window at the passing streetlights and whispered, "Maybe she'll remember it as the day she met her real daughter-in-law." The morning after our wedding, I woke to sunlight filtering through the curtains of a small cottage by the lake. Ethan was still asleep beside me, his hand resting on mine. Steady, warm, certain. For the first time in months, I felt peace. If you are watching this video, tell me where are you from, or what time is it for you? I made coffee and stepped outside. The water shimmered softly. Birds sang in the distance. Everything felt new. But peace has a way of being interrupted by unfinished lessons. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message. "Can I come by?" It was from her, Margaret, my mother-in-law. I showed Ethan. "She wants to visit." He sighed. "She'll probably apologize in her own expensive way." "Let her," I said. Some truths are worth repeating face to face. She arrived an hour later, stepping out of her sleek black car, wearing oversized sunglasses, and guilt disguised as confidence. I met her at the porch. "Morning," I said. She handed me a bouquet of white roses. Perfect. Deliberate. "Congratulations, again," she said. "Thank you," I replied, inviting her inside. For a while we just sat with the sound of the clock between us. Finally she took off her glasses and said, "I came to talk. I owe you that much." I smiled gently. "You don't owe me anything, Margaret, but if you want to talk, I'll listen." She exhaled slowly. "I was cruel. You reminded me of the girl I used to be before money taught me how to hide." I tilted my head. "What girl was that?" "The one who wore her mother's hand-stitched dress," she whispered. "The one who swore she'd never judge someone by their pocket." Her eyes filled, the polished shell cracking just enough to reveal a woman who had once been kind. "I forgot who I was," she said. "You reminded me." I didn't rush to forgive her. I just listened. Because forgiveness isn't something you give instantly. It's something that grows when pride runs out of air. After a pause, she said, "I looked through my purse last night. Found the receipt you paid. You shouldn't have done that." "I didn't do it to embarrass you," I said. "I did it because I never wanted this marriage to start in debt. Not financial, not emotional." Her tears fell freely now. "You're a better woman than I deserved." "No," I said softly. "Just one who's been poor enough to understand wealth isn't about price tags." For a moment we sat quietly. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "I brought you something." she said. I shook my head. You don't have to. I need to. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with 3 small charms, a rose, a heart, and a tiny book. The rose, she said, for grace. The heart, for the love you've shown my son. And the book, because you taught me something I thought I already knew. I turned it over in my hands, my throat tightening. It's beautiful. It was my mother's, she whispered. She gave it to me the day I got married. I don't deserve to keep it. You do, I said softly, but thank you for trusting me with it. She looked away, ashamed. I thought you'd come for our money. And I thought you'd never see past it, I said. Seems we were both wrong, she murmured. Later that afternoon, Ethan joined us. When he saw his mother's red eyes, he looked alarmed. Mom, what happened? She smiled faintly. Nothing bad, dear. Just a late lesson. She reached for his hand. You chose well, son. She has a soul that glows. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, I've known that all along. I smiled. He gets that from you, Margaret. She laughed softly. No, he gets it from the woman who raised him right. For the first time, I saw something new in her eyes. Respect. Not the shallow kind you give out of fear, but the deep kind that comes from understanding someone's heart. Before she left, she turned to me at the door. I don't know how to fix what I broke, she said. I took her hand. Start by showing love where it's hardest to give. To you? To yourself, I said. The rest will follow. She nodded slowly. You sound like someone's mother. One day I hope to be. I smiled. And I hope I remember this moment when I am. That evening, Ethan and I sat on the porch as the sun set. He glanced at the bracelet on my wrist. She gave you Grandma's? I nodded. That's huge, he said. She's never taken that off for anyone. Maybe it's time she finally let go of the weight, I whispered. He smiled. You changed her. No, I said softly. I just reminded her who she was before the world taught her to look down. Days later, I received an envelope, in the mail. Inside was a note in Margaret's handwriting. Thank you for teaching me that elegance is measured by kindness, not cost. I've made a donation in your name to a fund that pays for small weddings of couples who can't afford them. May others find joy the way you found love. Tears blurred the words before I even finished reading them. I walked to the garden, where sunlight spilled across the flowers, and whispered, maybe we all needed this wedding to learn how to start over. It's strange how life tests us twice. First when we're proud, and again when we've learned humility. A year passed after the wedding. Ethan and I had settled into a small house filled with plants, laughter, and the smell of coffee every morning. My relationship with Margaret had softened. Phone calls once a week, lunch once a month, small steps that built a bridge we both were scared to cross too fast. If you're watching this video, tell me where are you from, or what time it is for you. Then one day, out of nowhere, she called and said, I'm hosting a family dinner, a big one. I'd like you to come. I want everyone to meet the real you. Her voice trembled on that last part. It wasn't an order this time. It was an invitation. I smiled into the phone. We'll be there, Margaret. The evening arrived with the scent of spring, lilacs blooming, air soft as silk. When we entered her house, I hardly recognized it. The same grand dining room, yes. But this time there were wildflowers instead of crystal centerpieces, and candles that flickered instead of chandeliers blazing like spotlights. Margaret greeted us at the door herself, no housekeeper hovering nearby. "Welcome home," she said. Home. It was the first time she'd used that word. Ethan hugged her. "Mom, the place looks beautiful." She smiled. "Simple," she said, and glanced at me knowingly. Just how someone once taught me to appreciate. The dinner table was full of family, cousins, uncles, even a few of her wealthy friends from the club. Their perfume filled the room. Their jewels sparkled, and I could feel their curiosity like heat. Margaret stood and tapped her glass. "Before we begin, I'd like to say something," she said. Everyone turned to listen. "This past year," she began, "I learned that good taste has nothing to do with fabric, and elegance has nothing to do with money. I learned that my daughter-in-law is richer than I'll ever be, in grace, in patience, and in love." I froze, overwhelmed. One of her friends, the same woman who once giggled about my budget-friendly gown, leaned over and said, "Oh, Margaret, you're too kind. But we all make little mistakes." Margaret's eyes sharpened. "Little mistakes? No, Evelyn. Looking down on someone because you think you're above them isn't little. It's a sickness. One I had. And I'm grateful I recovered." The room fell silent. She turned back to me and smiled. "I used to believe money protected dignity. But it doesn't. Humility does. She showed me that." My heart trembled. Ethan reached for my hand under the table and whispered, "She's changed, Mom. You did that." When dessert was served, one of the younger cousins asked innocently, "Aunt Margaret, didn't you pay for their wedding? That's what Mom said." The air tensed. Margaret smiled gently. "No, dear. She paid. Every penny. And I'll never stop being proud of that." Her friend Evelyn frowned. "You mean she paid for everything? Even—" "Yes," Margaret interrupted. "Even your seat, Evelyn." Laughter rippled around the table. I covered my mouth to hide my smile, and Margaret caught my eye. Not with arrogance, but with mischief. For the first time, she wasn't laughing at me. She was laughing with me. After dinner, she led me into her study. On the wall hung a framed photo, Ethan and me on our wedding day. But below it was another frame, a check written to the Open Heart Wedding Fund. "I kept my promise," she said softly. "The fund is doing well. 4 weddings paid for this year." I stared at the photo, then at her. "You kept the letter's spirit alive." She nodded. "And every time I meet those couples, I see you in their eyes." Her voice wavered. "I want you to know something. You didn't just change me. You changed how our entire family sees love now." Just then the door opened. Evelyn peeked in. "Margaret, we're leaving, dear." "Lovely. Evening." Margaret smiled. "Thank you, Evelyn. Drive safe. And remember, humility looks good on everyone." After she left, Margaret turned to me with a grin that looked decades younger. "I used to think I was the teacher," she said. "Turns out I was the student all along." I laughed softly. "We're all still learning, Margaret. That's the beauty of it." She hugged me then. Not politely, not formally, but tightly, like a mother holding her own child. When she pulled away, her eyes glistened. "I hope you'll call me Mom one day." I smiled. "You already earned it." Later that night, as Ethan and I were leaving, Margaret stopped us at the door. She handed me an envelope. Small, cream-colored, sealed with gold wax. "Open it when you get home," she said. "It's something I want you to have." On the drive back, I stared at it in my lap. Ethan said, "What do you think it is?" I don't know, I whispered. But it feels like closure. When we reached home, I opened it carefully. Inside was a note written in her elegant handwriting. My dear, this time, I'm paying for something. Not out of guilt, but gratitude. I've bought a small plot of land by the lake. I want to build a retreat there, for brides who can't afford wedding planning, but deserve a place of beauty to begin their lives. I'd like you to run it with me. Love, Mom. Tears blurred the words. I looked at Ethan speechless. He smiled. She's not pretending anymore. I nodded. No. She's finally giving the kind of gift that never loses value. The next morning I called her. I read your note, I said softly. Are you sure? She laughed. Oh, I'm sure. Besides, someone has to make sure I don't overdecorate the place. I smiled through tears. Then I guess we're partners now. No, she said kindly. We're family now, and for the first time since the day she mocked my dress, I truly believed her. Time passes quietly when hearts finally make peace. 3 years after that dinner, Margaret and I had become inseparable. We ran our little lakeside retreat together, the one she named the Promise Place. Couples came from small towns, big cities, even different countries, and each of them left a little piece of their story with us. If you are watching this video, tell me where are you from or what time is it for you? Sometimes I'd catch Margaret sitting on the porch, notebook on her lap, watching the water ripple as if she were still searching for something. When I'd ask what she was thinking, she'd smile softly and say, about how foolish I once was, and how lucky I am now. We spent years like that, side by side, drinking tea, fixing flower arrangements, and helping strangers start the kind of marriages we had to rebuild within ourselves. Then one winter morning, I found her sitting in her favorite chair by the window, a blanket over her knees, a faint smile on her lips, but her breathing was still, peaceful, final. I didn't cry right away. I just stood there, watching the sunlight rest on her face. It was as if the world was thanking her for learning her lesson before leaving it. When Ethan and I sorted through her things later that week, we found a letter sealed with her familiar gold wax. It was addressed simply, to my daughter. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, the same elegant handwriting danced across the page. My dearest, the day I mocked your dress, I thought I was protecting my son from simplicity. I didn't realize simplicity is what saves us when pride destroys us. You taught me that grace doesn't need gold. It only needs heart. I used to measure people by how much they owned. Now I measure them by how gently they love. If this letter reaches you, it means I've gone home. But please remember, you didn't just marry my son. You redeemed his mother. Keep the promise. Place alive. Let every bride who walks through its doors wear the kind of beauty I once couldn't see. Mom. The tears came then, slow, quiet, honest. Ethan stood beside me, his arm around my shoulder. She loved you, he whispered. I know, I said, smiling through tears. And I love her too. Not for who she was, but for who she became. That night we lit candles by the lake. The water reflected the glow like 1,000 tiny stars. I whispered to the wind. You did good, Margaret. You finished your lesson. And in that silence, I could almost hear her voice again. Simple looks beautiful on you, dear. Months later, at our retreat, a young bride in a modest gown came to me crying. My future mother-in-law hates this dress, she said. I smiled gently and placed my hand over hers. Then let me tell you a story about a woman who once thought the same, until she didn't. She laughed through tears, and I handed her a single white rose. "Wear what feels like love," I said. "It'll fit better than anything money can buy." The bride hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you, ma'am." I smiled. "Don't thank me. Thank a woman named Margaret." And as she walked away, I looked up at the sky, and for just a moment, the sunlight reflected off the lake in the shape of a small, perfect heart.